Hey everyone, I'm Landon with LMR.com. In this video, I'm going to be checking out DIY Auto-Tune's Gen 2 MegaSquirt plug-and-play ECU designed specifically for the 1986 to 1993 Fox Mustangs. Despite the crazy name, MegaSquirt ECUs have been around the Fox community for quite some time now and have grown in popularity throughout the years. The MegaSquirt ECU is a standalone unit that replaces the factory Fox body EEC and allows custom tuning through the proprietary software called TunerStudio Lite. This ECU is engineered and built specifically for the fuel-injected 1986 to 1993 Fox Mustang and is scalable to multiple engine sizes. It is a true plug-and-play upgrade and mounts in the stock location. The case design and overall size is very similar to the factory computer, and the MegaSquirt even incorporates an OE-style connector. On the outside of the ECU will be a vacuum port for the integrated 4-bar MAP sensor, a circular canvas connector for the provided data cable, a 26-pin connector that can be configured to everyone's unique application, and an audio output for monitoring engine knock through a pair of headphones. So some of the basic tunable controls within the MegaSquirt are 16x16 fuel tables, bank-to-bank fuel control, 12x12 ignition tables, multiple acceleration enrichment strategies, closed loop idle control, air conditional idle up, and the capability to scale the engine displacement and injector rating. Some of the advanced features include a 12x12 air-fuel ratio target table for use with a wideband O2 sensor for precise tuning and table trim, overboost protection, knock sensing, a built-in 2-step rev limiter and launch control, which both require additional wiring to fully function. In the box will be one MegaSquirt ECU, 6 feet of vacuum hose, a small plastic T-fitting to tap into a vacuum line, a 6-foot serial cable, a 26-pin connector with 26 leads, and a USB thumb drive with TunerStudio Lite and the applicable drivers. Now, optional equipment I strongly recommend along with the MegaSquirt ECU is a serial to USB cable, as most modern laptop computers only have USB ports, and a supported wideband gauge such as the Innovate digital air-fuel ratio gauge. The only item required when installing this ECU is a modern laptop computer running a Windows-based operating system. As far as fitment goes, the MegaSquirt ECU will fit 1986 to 1993 302 or 351 base Mustangs. So for a few disclosures before we get rolling. The steps shown in this video could potentially change as the developer of the ECU and the software will proactively make changes. Also, because of the differences and unique characteristics of each individual setup. This video will be a light walkthrough of installing the MegaSquirt ECU, wiring a wideband air fuel gauge, and some of the basic parameters within TunerStudio Lite. At the end of the day, guys, you're going to need a lot of seat time to tune your own car. Don't expect this to happen in just a few hours or even a day for that matter, especially if you have a wild setup. Take your time, allow yourself to learn and soak in all the parameters and settings that the software has to offer. Well, enough of me talking, let's get to it. Before installing your MegaSquirt PCM, print and read through the instruction manuals first. This will familiarize yourself with terminology, processes, and other important information about the system. Before you begin anything, make sure the car can be supported by jack stands or a lift, and then disconnect the negative battery cable. Since you'll be working under the dash, I would recommend removing both seats from the car for additional workroom. On the passenger side of the car, remove the frontward scuff plate retaining screw, followed by the kick panel push pin. Pass the kick panel over the scuff plate, and then pull straight out on the panel to dislodge it from the car. Carefully remove it and set it aside. Locate the factory PCM. For additional working room, it may be in your best interest to disconnect a few electrical connections. Loosen the 10mm bolt, securing the electrical connection to the EEC. Once the bolt is loose, disconnect the connection. Loosen and remove the 9/32 EEC cradle hold-down bolt. Slide the EEC out of the cradle and remove it from the car. Loosen and remove the two 7mm glove box hinge retaining screws. Open the glove box, squeeze the sides together, and then remove it. To remove the AC blower box, loosen and remove the upper bolt that is located just behind the vent tube. Loosen and remove the small 7mm retaining screws located directly underneath the box. Before dropping it down, dislodge the vacuum line. Whenever you lower the box, disconnect the electrical connection and then it's free to come out. Dislodge the push pin securing the sound deadening material and remove it from the car. Finally, remove the factory EEC cradle and set this aside. The reason for removing all of these items is to easily have access to the passenger side firewall grommet. Carefully cut a small slit into the inside and to the outside of the grommet. Tape the provided vacuum hose to a long 1/4 inch extension and carefully poke it through the small cuts. Once it protrudes through the inside of the car, remove the tape and followed by the extension. Pull approximately 2 feet of hose into the car and use caution when pulling the vacuum hose through the grommet. If you're installing a wideband into the car, take this time to cut some small openings into the driver's side firewall grommet. Since you'll be passing through an electrical connector, the cuts will more than likely have to be a little bit larger than the cuts you made on the passenger side. Tape the end of the wideband connector that needs to be ran into the car to the 1/4 inch extension. Feed the extension through the grommet. Once inside, pull it through and then remove the tape and the extension. Now you need to support the car via a lift or jack stands. Whichever oxygen sensor you plan on replacing with the wideband sensor, go ahead and disconnect the connection. I'm choosing to remove the driver or left bank oxygen sensor. Loosen the sensor with a 7/8 wrench. Remove it from the mid-pipe. Take the wideband sensor and apply anti-seize if applicable. Loosely tighten the sensor as it will need to be removed for proper calibration before starting the car. Feed the wiring alongside the existing harness. Tape the factory connector and secure it out of the way. At this time, you can secure the wideband sensor wire alongside the existing starter wire. Tuck this wire out of the way. Since I'm installing a wideband gauge into the car, the PCM needs to be opened to configure the pre-installed oxygen sensor jumper. The PCM easily comes apart by removing the 4 Phillips head screws, which there are 2 per side. Remove the hexagonal screws from the serial connection with a 5mm socket and then carefully separate the top cover. Per the manual, the only jumper that should be changed, if desired, is J6. This location controls oxygen sensor connectivity. By default, the jumper is positioned over the middle pin labeled O2 sensor and the pin labeled J8-29. This setting is telling the PCM to read the right or passenger side bank. For our application, the jumper needs to be removed and reinstalled over the pin labeled J8-43. Jumping this pin will tell the PCM to read the driver's side or left bank oxygen sensor. This change will be determined on the location of your oxygen or wideband sensor. Reassemble the PCM and carefully retighten the retaining hardware. The wideband of choice for this application is going to be an Innovate wideband, and that means I'll need to configure the provided 26-pin connector. Referring to the PCM manual, the oxygen sensor input connection is pin 21 on the 26-pin connector. Make note of the numbered locations on this connector. Use one of the 26 provided leads and carefully install it into the correct location on the connector. The lead will install through the side with the larger holes and exit the side with the smaller holes. Position the 2 covers around the connector. Use the small hexagonal nuts and small screws to secure the covers. The covers have designated holes for the nuts because of their hexagonal shape. Install the wire holder just to fill the hole. Install the connector into the correct port on the PCM. Use the small flat rectangular washers and screws to secure the 26-pin connector to the PCM. While the PCM is out of the car and on your workbench, go ahead and strip the wire and twist. Now, since the factory PCM cradle requires modification in order to properly fit the MegaSquirt, I simply put 2 pieces of foam tape to prevent metal-to-metal contact and potential rattling noises. Plug in the factory connector and carefully tighten the 10mm retaining bolt. Connect the provided serial cable to the PCM and tighten the thumb screw. Install the provided vacuum hose over the plastic barbed fitting on the MegaSquirt PCM. Position the PCM into the original location and then reconnect any electrical connections that you disconnected for additional working space. Tuck the connections into the body of the car. Pull any slack out of the vacuum hose and route it alongside the existing wiring harness. Of course, ensure the vacuum hose is not pinched when doing this. Because there is a Vortex supercharger on this 1993 hatchback, I simply tapped into an existing vacuum line I had previously ran. There is plenty of vacuum hose provided, so you can easily run this towards the vacuum tree located near the wiper motor and tap into vacuum there. Route the serial cable behind the dash towards the driver's side. Safely secure this cable to an existing wiring harness running the length of the dash. Back at the PCM, remove the harness clip from the relay and position it out of the way. I am using a pillar pod for this car, so at this point I took the time to organize some of the wiring and temporarily mount the pod to the car. With all of the wires running to their respective location, I ran the extended analog output wire from the wideband gauge towards the PCM. Secure it to any existing harness running the length of the dash. Slide a butt connector over the wire from the 26-pin connector. Crimp the connector. Route the wire from the wideband towards the butt connector and then cut it to length. Strip the wire and twist. Insert it into the butt connector and crimp. If applicable, heat the connector to seal. Tuck this wire out of the way. Also, because the MegaSquirt ECU uses speed density as the primary fuel metering method, a mass airflow meter is no longer required and can be removed. It may also be in your best interest to cover the sensor connection and secure it out of the way. Depending on your application, you'll need to source an appropriate flow tube to properly fill the void where the mass air meter was installed. I took this time to press pause on what I was doing and calibrate the wideband sensor and load the TunerStudio into my laptop. Wideband calibration is very easy to do, and you'll want to follow the instructions for your particular gauge. Plug in the provided USB thumb drive to any open port on your computer. Open the thumb drive and then open the folder that is named with the part number. Double-click the setup file and then wait for the application to load. Follow the on-screen instructions as nothing needs to be modified or unchecked. I would recommend creating a desktop icon. TunerStudio will install first, and once it completes, you will be prompted to launch the program. Uncheck this and click Finish. The next application that will install is MegaLog Viewer. Like the previous application, run through the on-screen instructions. Once complete, uncheck any box that prompts you to launch or view the installation files. Close the window and eject the USB thumb drive. At this point of the install, I would recommend that you roughly tidy up any loose wires or connections. Get everything to where the car can still move under its own power if it has to. I would personally wait on putting stuff back together until the tune is close to being finalized. After all, you don't want to spend the time to dial everything in and then potentially run the risk of having to undo all of your hard work. If the driver's side seat is out, go ahead and put it back in the car. Connect the serial cable to the adapter and then the adapter to your laptop computer. Verify that the necessary drivers install successfully. Open the TunerStudio software and create a new project. Create a name for your project and then input a few notes about the car's modifications. Turn the key to the on position, but don't start the car. Click Detect to ensure the correct port is selected. Highlight the port and then click Accept. All of the configuration settings remain at default except for how the oxygen sensor reading is displayed. Select the sensor you have from the drop-down list and then click Next. Obviously, if you are using a wideband sensor, leave this setting as wideband. By selecting narrowband, the air-fuel mixture will display as volts, and by selecting lambda, it will display the air-fuel mixture from 0.5 to 1.5, with 1.0 being stoichiometric. Click Next, verify the connection, and then click Next again. Now you can select your dashboard configuration. There are several to choose from, but I like simplicity, so I'm sticking with the default dashboard. After you click Finish, the screen may flash, and then the project is ready for adjustment. Since the key is still in the on position, you will have full access to begin making changes. First things first, go ahead and save the tune. To do this, click File, Save Tune As. Verify that this is being saved in the correct project, and then give the file a name that can easily be identified. If for some reason you ever need to revert back to the base file, you can load this or download the file from DIY Auto-Tune. Before starting the car, go to the engine and sequential settings under the basic /load setting. Here you can adjust engine size and the fuel injector rating. First click Required Fuel. Enter your engine displacement, injector flow, and the desired air-fuel ratio, and then click OK. Now we need to verify the base timing. The MegaSquirt will have a base ignition map loaded and ready to use. However, it is necessary to ensure that the timing advance being commanded by the ECU is in sync with what the engine is actually receiving. Hook up a timing light and then start the car. Depending on your engine setup, the idle may temporarily rise or jump around. This is completely normal, as the current calibration is a startup file for a 5-liter engine. With the laptop still connected and the software open, navigate to Ignition Settings, and then Ignition Options /decoder wheel. If Fixed Advanced is set to Use Table, set it to Fixed Timing. This will tell the ECU to ignore the ignition table and hold a fixed advanced angle. Per the instructions, set this value to 12 degrees. Go ahead and burn these changes. Use the timing light and confirm that you have 12 degrees at the crank pulley. If you have more than 12, decrease the trigger angle value, and if you have less than 12, increase this value. Still within the combined ignition options, set the fixed advanced back to use table. Go ahead and burn these changes and then turn the car off. Now would also be a good time to go ahead and save the tune. Before you continue navigating through the software, I would recommend hooking up a battery tender when working with the software and having the key in the on position for extended periods of time. My next step in basic setup was to command TunerStudio to read a wideband. This is done within the Tools drop-down menu and under Calibrate AFR table. Select your sensor if it's supported, click Write to Controller, and then close. Once the sensor is calibrated, you need to set the Ego sensor type. This is done within the Fuel Settings box and under Ego Control. Change the sensor type to single wideband if applicable. The other parameters will allow you to alter Ego Control at full throttle, idle, or when the engine is cold. One of the tables that you will change is the VE table or fuel table. It is located under Fuel Settings. On the Y-axis is the fuel load, and the X-axis displays RPM. Both of these are scalable to your liking. If you have forced induction, the Y-axis will go over 100% load. However, the preset values are pretty much dead on. The current status of fuel load and RPM is indicated via a tracking dot surrounded by an oval. All of the cells within the fuel table can also be changed. The higher the number, the more fuel it commands, and it will become more rich. The lower the number, the less the ECU commands, and will become lean. This will be dialed in according to your setup. Whatever settings that are made, click Burn to write the changes to the ECU. If needed, save the tune file. The AFR table is for reference only unless the Incorporate AFR target is set to include the AFR target. That setting can be found within the General Settings under the Basic /Load Settings tab. If you include the AFR table, it will be included in the fuel calculation. The lower the air-fuel ratio number, the more rich the car will be. The higher the number, the more lean it will be. The ignition table is probably the most intimidating parameter within the software. I can't stress enough, take your time with this table. Like the other tables, adjust the load and RPM range, and know that boosted cars don't need as much timing as naturally aspirated cars. While tuning our Vortec car, it seems like I spent a lot of time within the startup and idle tab. Here you can adjust several parameters to achieve a nice idle. Like many of the other parameters, take your time to get a better understanding as to what you're changing. Whenever you feel that you're making progress, go ahead and dial in anything you need to and reinstall your interior components. I can't stress enough, guys, take your time when working with the MegaSquirt ECU and TunerStudio Lite. Speaking on behalf of my own experience, I was able to get a good understanding of the software after just a few hours of working through some of the menus. Our Vortec car is progressing nicely and needs just a few more tweaks to the current tune before we can call it done. Now here's the cool thing. Let's say we put a bigger engine in the car, maybe change out the cylinder heads and up the boost. We can go right into the software and make the necessary changes to the tune file and keep on moving. In the long run, this is going to save you time, money, and you won't have to hassle with burnable chips. Wrapping things up here, I really like this MegaSquirt ECU and its capabilities and would definitely recommend it to the Fox enthusiast out there looking for a nice dedicated ECU for their fuel-injected Fox Mustang. Of course, for the most current pricing, product information, and the availability on anything you may have seen in the video, be sure and reference lmr.com. To see more how-to and review videos covering industry-leading products, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like and share this video with your friends, and don't forget to turn on those notifications. While you're at it, check out our other videos, and for all things 1979 to present Mustang and SVT Lightning, keep it right here with the real enthusiasts, lmr.com.